Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we take your sources, articles, notes, whatever you've got, and we really cut through the noise to find the signal.
Yeah, the goal is to give you that shortcut. You get
Mhm.
the core insights, the really useful stuff, without having to wade through everything yourself.
Exactly. And hopefully some of those surprising facts that, actually stick with you.
Uh-huh.
So today we are plunging into a really fascinating space. It's all about building successful brands without showing your face, and crucially, how AI models are just completely changing the game here.
It really is a hot topic. It
Yeah.
blends like creativity, tech, privacy. It's got a bit of everything. And we've got a great mix of sources today.
Oh, yeah. What are we looking at?
Well, we've got blog posts that really break down the how-to, the
Yeah.
practical steps. And there are articles looking at the bigger picture, the trends,
Okay.
and even some transcript excerpts that touch on this in specific sort of niches.
Mm-hmm.
So multiple angles on building influence when you're
Okay.
deliberately, behind the curtain.
Right. So our mission for this deep dive, let's unpack why this faceless trend is happening, walk through how you actually build one of these brands, and then really get into how AI fits in, especially, I guess, for creating the visuals.
Exactly. That's a huge part of it. And for you listening, the big takeaway should be a clear, kind of actionable understanding of this whole strategy.
Yeah, if you're curious about doing something online, maybe you want more privacy, or you just want to get how these new tools are making different kinds of influence possible.
This should give you a really solid source-backed blueprint.
All right, let's dive in. Thinking back just a few years, influencer basically meant you were the brand. Your face, your life, that was the content.
Totally, that was the model.
But the sources we're looking at today, they all point to this pretty significant shift. Why? Why are people choosing to go faceless now? What's driving it?
Well, the sources hit on a few big things. Privacy is definitely number one.
Yeah, I can see that.
For a lot of creators,
Mm-hmm.
especially maybe in certain more sensitive niches,
Mm-hmm.
putting yourself out there physically just comes with huge risks. Safety concerns, harassment, even doxing.
Scary stuff.
It is.
Yeah.
And then there's just the burnout, always having to be on, performing yourself. Some sources frame AI here as like a way to take back power.
Mhm.
You can build this big social presence, even a really aspirational one,
Mm-hmm.
without actually putting your personal self out there, exposed to all that.
So it's partly defensive, creating a buffer zone.
Exactly. But it's not just defensive. It's also a really interesting, creative, and strategic move.
How so?
When you're not the literal face,
Mhm.
the sources point out you get, well, incredible creative control and aesthetic freedom.
Ah.
You become the architect. You design the whole thing, the look, the feel, the vibe,
You
completely.
control the narrative.
Precisely. The brand can be, consistently flawless,
Yeah.
always on message, always projecting the exact mood you want 24/7. You're not limited because you woke up feeling off or didn't do your hair.
Huh. Yeah, that makes total sense. It's like designing an ideal rather than just showing your messy reality.
Exactly. And that naturally shifts where the audience puts their focus.
Yeah.
Instead of it being all about the person,
Right.
their attention goes to the product or the brand's story or its message. One source puts it really well. Customers don't necessarily need to know who you are. What matters is what your brand stands for.
That feels like a key distinction. Moving from personality-driven to, like, values-driven or aesthetic-driven.
Yeah.
Okay, so you decide, right, I'm doing this faceless thing. Where do you start? What's the groundwork according to these sources?
Okay, so just like any business, really, even a faceless one needs a super solid foundation. The sources are all really clear on this. You start with the core stuff.
Like mission statements and that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Your vision, your values, your big why. Who are you actually trying to reach? What problem are you solving? Or what desire are you tapping into? That's the bedrock. You have to know that first.
The purpose comes before the persona.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then, building right on top of that bedrock, is this idea of persona design.
Persona design. Okay.
Since there's no you being the face, the brand itself needs a really distinct identity. So you define its vibe, the lifestyle it represents. Is it like super luxe travel, minimalist wellness, gritty city life, whatever?
You paint a picture.
Exactly. And you define specific character traits for this brand persona. One source gave some fun examples like the rich girlfriend vibe or soft-spoken sweetheart, even dominatrix and pearls.
Wow, dominatrix and pearls, that's specific. Okay, but it sounds like you're basically creating a fictional character. How do you keep that from feeling, I don't know, fake? How does it feel authentic to the brand?
That's where consistency becomes absolutely crucial. The sources hammer this point home.
Okay.
Consistency in the look, the tone, the overall vibe,
Yeah.
that's what makes the persona feel coherent and, well, believable, even if
Yeah.
it's constructed. So if your brand persona is all about luxury, then every visual, every caption has to live in that world. Yachts, silk robes, whatever fits. You're constantly asking, does this align with what the brand stands for?
Consistency, consistency, consistency.
Got it. The identity has to be rock solid. So once you've nailed the purpose and you've designed this distinct persona, how do you make it visually recognizable? What actually makes a faceless brand look like itself?
This is where all those traditional branding elements become even more important, because essentially they become the face.
Ah, okay.
The sources list them out: your brand name, your tagline, a full logo suite, your specific color palette, your chosen fonts, any icons you use, and that overall visual style we just talked about.
Like how you just know it's Nike from the swoosh and the font, even without seeing an athlete.
Exactly that. And again, consistency here isn't just important. The sources say it's everything. It has to be locked down across all your touch points.
Everywhere. Yeah, your website, every single social post, your emails, product packaging if you have it, everything. This cohesive visual identity is what people learn to recognize and associate with your brand. That's how you build recognition without a human face.
Okay, but how do you actually generate all those visuals consistently if you don't have a person to, take pictures of or film?
So the sources mention specific tactics here. Using really high-quality stock photos or videos that perfectly match the brand's vibe is one way.
Okay.
Creating custom graphics, maybe animations, or just focusing purely on really stunning product photography or abstract aesthetic shots that just capture the mood.
Right. Okay, now this is where I get really curious, because that sounds like a ton of ongoing creative work. Is this where AI really starts to shine? What do the sources say about using AI for these visuals?
This is exactly where AI becomes such a massive advantage for faceless brands. The sources really highlight this. AI tools give you the power to generate incredible visual content, images, yes, but even video and audio now, and do it at scale. They let you create those synthetic visuals we talked about with amazing consistency and perfectly tailored to the persona you've designed. You can literally tell it the mood, the lighting, the style, and generate visuals that fit your brand's world exactly, again and again.
Yeah. It's almost like having a dedicated, tireless creative team on call 24/7.
Pretty much, yeah. The sources even name drop specific tools people are using. Midjourney comes up a lot for those really polished editorial style images.
Okay.
Leonardo AI gets mentioned for stylized fashion shots. Promptchan is cited as a place to find and share prompts, like recipes for getting specific AI looks.
Interesting.
And one source even mentioned Seduced AI for, NSFW styling and pre-built options, which just shows the sheer range of how AI is being used to build these digital personas.
So these tools are directly enabling that consistent, high-quality visual world that defines the faceless brand.
Absolutely. They give you the means to make that carefully designed persona visually real and repeatable.
But, and there's always a but, right? The sources also seem to caution that visuals, while super important, aren't the whole story. Where do people often go wrong with this approach?
Yeah, this is a really critical point where a lot of attempts apparently fall flat. They focus only on nailing the visual aesthetic.
And that's not enough.
Not according to these sources. They really emphasize that branding fundamentally is storytelling. You're not just putting out pretty pictures. You have to build a digital character, that brand persona, and give it a narrative.
A story for a brand that isn't like a real person? That feels a bit weird.
It does sound counterintuitive, but that's kind of the magic. You need to build a sense of its lifestyle, maybe hint at a backstory, use emotional cues. What does this persona do all day? Is it always traveling? Does it live in some cool minimalist space? What's its voice in the captions? Is it flirty, witty, deep? Does it use certain catchphrases or quotes? Does it show little daily routines? One source even used the word obsession. You need to obsess over building this character's world and story. That's what drives deep engagement.
So you're giving the brand layers, making it feel relatable or aspirational on an emotional level, even without seeing a face.
Exactly. The argument in the sources is the more human you make the brand feel through its story, emotionally human, not physically, the more real the audience connection becomes. And that connection, built through consistent storytelling and a voice they recognize, is what leads to trust and, ultimately, sales. Just think about big, successful brands. They all tell a story, right? Even if it's subtle.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so we've got the core idea, the persona, the AI-powered visuals, and this vital storytelling layer. How do you actually distribute all this? How do you get the brand out there without showing up yourself? What content strategies are working?
There's actually a pretty wide range of content formats that work really well for faceless brands based on the sources. Blogging and written content are foundational. Good for SEO, brings people to your site, lets you answer questions deeply.
Text is always reliable.
Totally. Then there's video, but obviously video where you don't show your face. So think using good stock footage, animations, text-on-screen videos, or just focusing the camera on, say, hands doing a tutorial or on the product itself.
Right.
Podcasting, like this, is perfect. You share your expertise or stories just through audio.
Yeah.
Naturally faceless.
True.
And for people who like visuals, but maybe not long videos, things like infographics, charts, carousels, those are great. Easy to digest, super shareable, good for explaining things or telling a small story.
Yeah, those always catch my eye.
Other tactics mentioned. Tutorials focus just on the process, like hands doing DIY stuff. Unboxing videos focused only on the product reveal. Motivational quotes laid over nice backgrounds. List top 10s, quick facts, and story times. But using visuals like book pages, turning, graphics, or just atmospheric B-roll footage while you narrate.
And you mentioned aesthetic clips, too.
Yeah, just curating beautiful little video clips or image sequences that purely capture the brand's vibe. A really key insight from the sources is to diversify. Offer content for different ways people like to learn.
Like a blog for readers, a podcast for listeners.
Exactly, an animation for visual learners. And, critically, repurpose your content. Take one core idea or piece of content and spin it out into multiple formats for different platforms.
That's smart. Work smarter, not harder.
Definitely. And the sources rattle off a whole list of platforms that are good fits. Instagram, X, formerly Twitter, Pinterest, YouTube, TikTok, even LinkedIn, depending on the brand, Facebook, Lemonade, Snapchat, Threads, Quora, Substack, Reddit.
Wow, okay. Lots of options.
Yeah. The best fit just depends on whether your main thing is text, photos, graphics, video, or audio.
So plenty of places to put the content out. But building a brand isn't just shouting into the void, right? It's about connection. How do these faceless brands actually engage with people?
Right. Faceless definitely does not mean silent or disengaged. The sources are really clear. Interaction is vital.
But how do you build that relationship without, a face to relate to?
It circles back to that strong persona and voice. Strategies mentioned include developing a really recognizable and consistent caption voice. Whatever the brand's personality is, sassy, wise, helpful, luxurious, decision, it needs to come through consistently in comments and replies too.
Okay.
Using strong calls to action is important. Asking questions, prompting shares, encouraging responses.
Getting people talking.
Yeah. Running things like polls or Q&A sessions, maybe using Instagram stories features. Featuring user-generated content is powerful, showing off testimonials or customer photos. Sending personalized emails is another tactic mentioned.
So the brand itself needs to feel present and responsive.
Absolutely. It needs to show up in the comments, reply to DMs, listen to feedback, and make those replies feel genuine to the brand's voice. People will connect with that feeling of being heard and interacted with, even if it's coming from a brand persona.
Okay, the big one then. How do these faceless brands actually make money? What are the monetization models that the sources highlight?
Several paths seem common. Subscription platforms are big. That could be FanView or OnlyFans if the content leans that way.
Right.
Or platforms like Substack or Patreon for offering exclusive stuff, like maybe AI prompt packs, detailed tutorials, or behind-the-scenes content showing how the aesthetic is made.
Monetizing the how-to or the exclusivity.
Exactly. Selling digital products is another major one. Things like those AI prompt packs, guides, templates, systems, stuff people can buy to get a piece of the brand's magic or process.
Okay.
You can sell those through simple tools like TapLink or Gumroad, or a full storefront like Shopify. People who admire the brand's look or results often want the tools to achieve something similar.
And that sounds like it could have really low overheads and high margins.
Huge potential there, yes.
Yeah.
Sources mention that. Brand partnerships can also come into play once the faceless brand builds real influence. Companies might want to sponsor content that aligns with that specific aesthetic or audience.
Makes sense.
And one source talked about a value ladder. The idea is, as your audience connects more deeply, you can offer them progressively higher value products or services.
It almost sounds like drop shipping, but for a digital persona or aesthetic instead of physical products. Low overhead, high margins, potentially infinite scalability. That's pretty compelling.
It really is a powerful model, and the sources are very firm on this. Despite the cool tech and strategies, this is definitely not an overnight success kind of deal.
Right. It still takes work. So what's needed to make it sustainable for the long haul?
Consistency. That word comes up again and again across all the sources. It's absolutely paramount. Sticking to a regular posting schedule is non-negotiable for building momentum and keeping your audience engaged.
Keep feeding the beast.
Basically, yeah. And just as important is constantly refining things, paying attention to audience feedback, tracking your analytics to see what's actually working, and tweaking your branding and content based on that data. You have to be committed for the long game.
So keep showing up, keep creating, keep listening, keep adapting.
That's the essence of it. The big takeaway is that a faceless brand can absolutely have a strong, unique personality and voice. It just requires really careful planning and persistent, consistent effort over time.
This whole approach really pushes back against traditional ideas of what a brand or influencer even is. And when you layer in AI, creating these incredibly polished synthetic personas, well, it brings up some interesting questions, doesn't it? One source specifically mentioned the ethical side.
They did, yeah. There's definitely a critique out there. Some people see these AI-generated models or purely synthetic brands as like inauthentic, faking connection, or maybe even irresponsibly promoting unrealistic beauty standards because the visuals can be tweaked to absolute perfection.
That seems like a valid concern. Is it just a super sophisticated way to sell an impossible ideal? Or even kind of tricking people about who or what is behind the brand?
Well, the sources also present the other side of that coin. They argue that AI actually gives creators important options. Options for safety, freedom from harassment, freedom from being judged only on their physical appearance. It allows for pure creative expression.
Okay.
And being transparent about the process, being real about the art behind it, as one source put it, is framed not as being dark, but as being, well, futuristic. It's a new way to build influence and create digital art.
So transparency about the method, even if the final product is synthetic, is kind of the key to that counter-argument.
That seems to be the idea. And one source points out that the lines are blurring anyway. Lots of real models and influencers are already using AI tools heavily for retouching or generating alternative content. It kind of forces us to rethink what authentic even means online now.
So if we boil all this down, if someone listening is thinking, okay, I want to try this, what's the core blueprint based on these sources?
Okay, based on everything we've gone through, the blueprint looks something like this. First, meticulously build that persona. Be intentional. Nail down your why, your values, the specific traits of your brand character.
Step 1, persona.
Step 2, leverage the tools, especially AI tools like the ones mentioned, to generate that consistent, high-quality visual content at scale. Make sure it perfectly embodies the persona.
Step 2, AI-powered visuals.
Step 3, focus relentlessly on the story. Craft a compelling lifestyle brand. Tell its narrative consistently. It's not just about pretty pictures. It's about the world you build.
Step 3, storytelling.
Step 4, monetize strategically. Use models like subscriptions or digital products. Focus on those advantages, low overhead, scalability.
Step 4, smart monetization.
And finally, maybe step 5, be prepared to be transparent about the creation process. Frame it as art, as a creative endeavor, not as trying to fool anyone.
Right. It sounds like shifting into the role of a director, like one source said. You're not waiting to be discovered based on your looks. You're actively designing the desire, crafting the entire world and the character in it.
Exactly. You're building the fantasy or the aspiration or the vibe from the ground up. And, a lot of these sources actually mention going deeper, like pointing to Substack posts with specific prompt packs or system breakdowns.
So there's more granular detail out there if you really want to get into the weeds.
For sure. This deep dive gives you the map, but those other resources sound like the turn-by-turn directions if you want them.
Got it. Okay, so that leaves us with a pretty big thought to chew on. In this digital world where brands can be huge without a face and where stunning visuals can be literally conjured up by AI, how do our basic ideas about connection, about authenticity, about influence itself, how do they need to change?
That really is the provocative question, isn't it? When the face of the brand is a deliberate construct and the visuals are generated, where does genuine connection actually happen? Is it in the consistency of the story? Is it in the value the brand provides? The quality of the interaction?
Yeah.
It forces you, I think, to look beyond just the surface image and really reconsider what you value in that digital relationship, whether you're the creator or the consumer.
Definitely something to keep thinking about as we all navigate this constantly shifting online landscape. Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive.
Yeah, keep exploring. Based on these insights, the The frontier of digital branding feels pretty wide open right now.
We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.